Hey scholars, so we've been looking about how to tell time. Yesterday we looked closely at the clock and we talked about times when our minute hand is to the 12. Today we're going to do something a little different where we actually will draw the hands on the clock. But before we get started, I want to review some information about our clock that we talked about. So yesterday when you looked at this clock, we talked about how we have our big numbers that only go to 12, and then we had these smaller numbers. Now these bigger numbers that are written in red that go to 12 talk about with our hour hand. Then these smaller numbers go with our minute hand. And when we're telling time, we have our hour hand, which is the short hand, and our minute hand, which is the long hand. And we first always look at the hour hand before we go to the minute hand. And as the minute hand moves, our hour hand also moves. Because when we're talking about time, it doesn't just stay the same time all day. The hands are moving as we go throughout the day. And yesterday we talked about how we have 60 minutes in 1 hour. So for this minute hand to go around, it takes it 60 minutes for it to go from the 7 to now it's 8 o'clock to the new next hour. We also talked about how there's 24 hours in a day. Because in the morning, we have it go around for the 12 different hours. So we have 1 and it goes all the way to 12. Once it gets back to 12 again, then it's the afternoon. So we have the first part of the day, the first 12 hours are our morning, the second 12 hours are our afternoon or the nighttime, p.m. So we're going to look closely about how we talk about writing our hands on our clock. So I want to review some information from our chart before we get started with our drawing. So yesterday we talked about how we had the 2 different clocks. We had the analog clock and our digital clock. And when we were looking at our time yesterday, we had our short hand, which is our hour hand. Our minute hand is our long hand. And we looked at when our minute hand was always at the 12. And whenever our minute hand's at the 12, it will say o'clock or 00. So our hour hand is pointing to the 3, so we had our 3 first. The minute hand's pointing to the 12, so that's our o'clock. So this time says 3 o'clock. So today we're going to practice using our 2 different colors. So just like our clock here, I'm going to use red for the hour for our first number and blue for our minute. So for our first time, again, our clock, it doesn't have any of the hands because we have to draw it. So it wants us to make 5 o'clock, or again, you can write it 500. So the first number is our hour. So that's going to have me use, so this tells me my hour. So my hour hand, my short hand, needs to be at that number. Then the o'clock, who remembers where does my minute hand go for o'clock? Let's look over here to review. Where is my minute hand to show o'clock? Right, it goes to the 12. So my minute hand will go all the way up to the 12. So this second part, the o'clock or the 00, my minute hand goes to the 12. So now we have 5 o'clock. Now we need to draw 6 o'clock. So we look at our first number because that tells us our hour. So my hour hand has to point to the 6. So I'm going to point it and make sure it's short. The hour hand's always shorter. And then where does my minute hand, my long hand, go for the o'clock? Right, it goes up at the 12. So again, notice how for my minutes, my o'clock or the 00, my minute hand is longer. So think about how the word minute is long, but the word hour is short. So the long word minute goes with our long hand. The short word hour goes with our short hand to help you out. I want to try one more here. So again, our first number when we're telling time tells us the hour. So I can draw my short hand, the hour hand. So it says 9 o'clock. So where does my hour hand go? Right at the 9. So again, I'm going to draw it nice and small. Notice I don't draw it all the way over because then that would look like a minute hand. So it's nice and short. Now I need to draw my hour hand, or not my hour hand, my minute hand. And remember, we always have two hands, so my clock's not finished yet. So we have o'clock for our minutes, or the 00. So where does my minute hand have to go to show o'clock, or 00? Right, it goes up to the 12. So now my clock says 9 o'clock. So today you're going to practice drawing your own two hands. And again, remember, when you draw your hour hand, draw it shorter, and your minute hand is longer. Can't wait to see your work.